Good afternoon. My name is Robert Redmayne. I'm a second generation oyster farmer from Port Stephens up in New South Wales. So I found the oyster reef restoration project a very interesting one to research. It was also a great example of industry collaboration. The Nature Conservancy, Victorian Fisheries Authority and the Albert Park Yachting and Angling Club all working together to restore the reefs that have almost completely vanished from Port Phillip Bay. To date, they have restored 1,200 square metres of reef at Geelong Arm and Hobson's Bay by laying down a foundation of 180 tonnes of limestone and repopulating it with the native Angazi oyster from the Victorian Shellfish Hatchery in Queenscliff, much like these little gems that I grew here. We spoke to Simon Brannigan from the Nature Conservancy about their role in the project. The Nature Conservancy are foundation partners, co-founders, project managers and lead implementers in the Port Phillip Bay oyster reef restoration. Simon was quite excited about the idea of uniting three different partners and working together on a project. This was an excellent bridge building opportunity to get stakeholders that have previously had a lot of bad blood between them working together. It can really break down some of the major barriers to the success of these projects and really lead the charge in unifying the seafood community. One of the Nature Conservancy's key roles was to help source funding, which has been identified as one of the key barriers in habitat restoration. Another key barrier they faced was a lack of basic policy framework. One issue that did arise was the lack of representation by the commercial fishers, even though everyone seems to agree that we need to keep growing the marine restoration capacity across Australia. So this got me thinking, it's great that these organisations are working together, but how can we get more stakeholders involved? To find answers to this, I asked around my local oyster farming community to see what's stopping them getting involved. When I started talking with the oyster farmers about habitat restoration, everybody reacted very positively and thought, this is a great idea and brilliant that someone is doing it. However, when I asked if they would be interested in getting involved in a habitat restoration project, people started to clam up. It's a great idea until they have to invest time, money, energy into something that has no perceived benefit to the oyster farming community. People refer to oysters as the canaries of the waterways. Oyster farmers' livelihoods depend on good water quality, so we're regularly testing to make sure our harbours are healthy. There's almost a feeling of, we've done enough. Why should we be involved in fixing someone else's problem? But if the water quality drops and we can't harvest, then we're really going to wish we had done something before it became our problem. I spoke briefly to Sam Gordon from Blue Harvest, a seafood sales and marketing agency specialising in aquaculture, to see if habitat restoration was something they would look at investing in. And his response was very positive and said it was definitely something they would consider, listing positives such as social licence and more food in the water as obvious benefits. Having more food in the water would lead to more oyster production, so habitat restoration really does in fact have a positive economic outlook for oyster farmers, and we need to promote these benefits to get them on board. Now I'll hand over to Justin, who has some great insight into the challenges and opportunities for habitat restoration faced by the greater aquaculture sector.